How's it going, everybody? CJ here, back into the video. We're doing another first thought today. This first thoughts is on Felisa, Fang of Silverquill. Before we hop into it though, remember, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Like this video, comment down below what you're doing with Felisa, if there's any cool cards that I did not mention that you found that would work really well in the deck. Also comment whatever you want, just more engagement. Come on, comment down below. Also, way down below, we got the Twitch. We got Twitter. Well, not way down below. It's above the comments, I guess. But in the description, Twitch, Twitter. We got the Discord. We've got the TCG Player affiliate link. If you're going to buy any cards talking about in this video, buy them through there. Helps with the channel. And we've got the Patreon if you want to support the channel that way. Now, we're going to hop into this. So, Felisa, Fang of Silverquill. This card's very powerful. It's very cool. Super, super cool here. So, non-token creatures you control dies. If it had counters on it, create X tokens, where X is the number of counters it had. You're going to be able to make a lot of tokens using this deck. First thing you're going to want is Anointed Procession, so you can double the tokens. Anointed Procession is going to be heavily played in a lot of these new decks. Hopefully you were able to buy one before all these spoilers started, because it's probably very, very pricey right now. Next, we want to talk about the first thing is just going to be a bunch of different random cards that just synergize very well. You got Black Sun Zenith. It's a board wipe that puts counters on everything. So when the board wipe happens, you're going to be making a ton of tokens after it's done with. And you can, if you have the Orzhov in play, also the Orzhov seems fantastic in this deck. You can move those -1/-1 counters around to your opponent's stuff after the board wipe is done, because the Orzhov works like that, and that seems really sweet. It seems really, really sweet. You just start murdering things. Or murder one thing, I guess. Yeah, you can kill one thing after it. But still seems very good. You got Luminous Broodmoth. So when your creatures die, they come back with a flying counter on them. So you can sack a creature, it comes back with a counter on it. If you sack it again, then you get a token. That seems powerful. You got Highlander, the Dusk Rose. This card that's going to be making, like, the more you sack, it's going to be a very aristocrat style deck. So the more you sacrifice stuff, and I'll talk about the real aristocrat stuff at the end of this, but the more stuff you sack, the bigger she gets. Then when she dies, she makes a bunch of tokens, and then you'll make more tokens with Felisa's trigger. You got Phyrexian Devourer. This card's sweet in this deck. You can just exile a bunch of cards off your library, sacrifice it, make a ton of tokens, and then just go nuts. Taste of Karlov, just double the number of tokens. That seems very powerful. You got Blood Tracker. Blood Tracker gives you an outlet to literally just pay life and put counters on it. And then you draw a bunch of cards when he dies. So you can draw a ton of cards, make a ton of tokens, and it's all just via life. That seems very powerful. There's a bunch of Ajani's that work very well in this deck. Just a bunch that all put counters on things. You got Alharu, Solemn Ritualist. New card from Commander Legends. Enters and puts counters on things. Alright. But the big thing is that it kind of acts as a second Felisa, because whenever a non-token creature you control dies with a +1/+1 counter on it, create a 1/1 white spirit token with flying. That seems great. Just extra tokens. And after going through everything, +1/+1 counters seems to be the best strategy with this deck, because it's a lot of support for +1/+1 counters, and there's some other counter stuff you can throw in just to add to it. Like Atheris the Shroud Veiled. You can put coin counters on things, and they'll come back after they die. That seems pretty decent. Skyclave Shade. It's a recurable creature that you can sacrifice over and over and over again. But if you pay the extra mana, then it comes in with counters on it. So when you sack it, you make tokens, and that seems great. You got Blood Crazed Paladin. So after a board wipe, you can throw this thing into play, and it just enters with a ton of counters on it. So you'll be able to make a lot of tokens, and you'll probably already have a lot of tokens. So seems good. Cathar's Crusade. Whenever a creature enters, you're putting counters on everything. Great card. Crystalline Giant, every turn gets a new counter added to it, different kind of counter, so that's kind of cool with the Orzhov, but it's a good card in the deck. Dreadhorde Invasion, every upkeep you're putting a creature token into play with a counter on it, and if you don't sack that token, then you're just adding counters to it, so it's synergistic there. Felidar Retreat, Every time a land enters, you're either making a token or putting counters on everything. Either way, it's good for your deck. It's good for your synergies, but counters definitely better because you're putting a counter on everything. So that means if for each creature you have, you're going to be getting an extra token. Seems good. Mortician Beetle, you're doing a lot of sacrificing. You're going to be able to grow this thing really big, and then when it dies, you get a bunch of tokens. Like, there's so many good synergies in this deck. It's great. Myriad Construct. If you kick this thing, you'll get a ton of counters on it. You kill it, you get a ton of tokens. Like, a ton of tokens, because you also get the Myriad Construct tokens. Awesome. Nakara Layer Scavenger. When this thing dies, you're getting, or when your stuff dies that has counters on it, you're drawing cards. Seems great. Sunscorched Regent gets counters on whenever your opponents cast spells. Also, it can help pad your life total, which is nice. And lastly, Tetsumak. Didn't write the rest of its name. But Tetsumak. This card is super cool in this deck. Because you can just pay 1 black whenever you want to and reveal it from your hand and put counters on your own things. So that way when they die, you get tokens. And it's just 1 mana to do so. So if you have like Cabal Coffers and Urborg in play, you can make a ton of black mana and just dump it all into just putting counters on things. And you can just do it whenever you want to. It stays in your hand so you don't lose it. It's great. And then if you really need to, you can start putting things on your opponent's stuff and play it to kill. And this card's just great. Tetsumak is awesome. Great include for this deck. Next up, I want to talk about some cards that just have specific +1/+1 counter synergies. You've got Abzan Falconer to give all your creatures flying. Abzan Battle Priest for lifelink. Enoch Bondkin for first strike. Animation Module, so you can make more tokens. Very synergistic with the deck. And Basri's Lieutenant, so when your creature with +1/+1 counters on them die, you're getting more tokens. And it also adds tokens. It's just a good card. Next up, I'm going to talk about some creatures that will enter with a lot of counters on them already. You got, most of these are X spells. So you got stuff like Endless One, Stonecoil Serpent, Ugin's Conjurant, Hangerback Walker, which will also make a bunch of tokens when it dies on its own, so extra tokens. Cryptic Trilobite. You got Maga, Trader of Mortals, which kind of exsanguinates, which is cool. And Machias the Lunarch, which can also divvy up counters among everything, so that way you're getting more counters out there. That's a great card for this deck. You can also throw in cards of Modular, because there's a lot of good artifact creatures that work with this deck, so Modular seems decent, so you can throw in like Arcbound Bruiser, Arcbound Overseer, Arcbound Crusher, and Arcbound Fiend. All seem pretty decent. Next up, I'm going to talk about the Aristocrat stuff. So, there's some specifically good sack outlets for this deck. Like, obviously, the altars are great, being Altar of Dementia, Ashnod's Altar, Phyrexian Altar. Great sack outlets. But there are specific sack outlets that work very well in this deck. And those include Arcbound Ravager, you've got Carrion Feeder, Defiant Salvager, Flesh Carver, Voracious Null, and Yaheni. All these are great because they add counters. So you're killing things to get tokens, and then you're making counters that will, like, it's just very synergistic. And then if you're going to run the Aristocrat style stuff, you're going to also want to run the cards that draw you cards when creatures die. You're going to want to run the cards that have triggers when creatures die. And you'll run the cards that are like Grave Pact. So people sacrifice creatures when your creatures die. All that seems very good in the deck. And lastly, I want to talk about Persist and Undying, because both of these are great. When your creature dies that has Persist, it comes back into play with a counter on it. So then when it dies again, it dies, but you get a token in place of it. So Persist creatures and Undying creatures seem great in this deck. And specifically, throwing in Machias and Cauldron of Souls seems great, because you can control the Persist with Cauldron of Souls, and Machias will just give everything Undying, so that works really, really well in the deck. Just exciting stuff here. And that is what I got for Felisa, Fang of Silverquill. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Peace out, everybody. That was bad snap. There. Peace out, everybody.